Good afternoon. Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome to our fireside chat on innovation in action, real life stories of tech adoption in local government. My name's Natasha Bradley from Empower M365, and I'm very excited to be joined by Josh Wilson from Oxford County Council. Josh, can you introduce yourself, please?
So I am Josh Wilson, and I work as an IT strategic business partner in Oxfordshire. I effectively see myself as a bit of a translator. I sit between the techies and the kind of the services, the operations, and make sure what we're doing strategically is aligning. Make sure that everyone's doing things in a compliant way, making sure that they're keeping IT informed, making sure that IT are keeping them informed. Just making sure that strategy meets up with digital objectives.
Perfect. And Josh, we know how important technology adoption is, but how do you align technology adoption with strategic goals of the council?
So I like to look at the strategy first, and I think we sometimes pull strategies from consultancies, and we avoid the within, and there's a lot of knowledge buried down there within, particularly in the operational side. So understanding the problems and building strategies that counter those problems, I think, gets the buy-in. So that's where you get the adoption from. Because I think when I deal a lot in the front line, I work with the frontline workers, understanding what their needs are, they feel is missed quite frequently. And I think that's really important to make sure that whatever arrives on their phone, on their laptop, relates to what they were looking for in the first place and solves a problem they knew they already had. That's really how I think we drive the buy-in to move along with strategic objectives. I also really think we should be focusing on the why. I think, again, that's quite missed. So communicating that why down the organization. You know, I've been on the kind of operational side. I've been at the front end of an organization, and not really understood what these big posters on the wall are all about. I don't understand how they link into my role, and I know there's a chain for it to pass through and it should get to me, but I think explaining the why as part of the strategic objective then sets it in context that then can be applied in your role, and I think that's a really good way to get that buy-in, that collaborative buy-in that we need.
Yeah, I always sort of say it's how you make people feel that will drive adoption. So if there's hearts and minds, but it's more than hearts and minds. I think it's more about how you make them feel, and if you make them feel important and bring them on that journey, and I think you will get successful adoption. So, Josh, can you share an example of successful adoption that you've delivered?
Yeah, I think I would always say it's partially successful. I think there's quite a few barriers that we have to get past at the moment. I'm relatively new in this field, so a short spell of time to kind of match the technical needs of a service versus the IT objectives has been quite new to me. But what I have found is that we've been really limited by digital competence and confidence. And I think there are pockets we see in the organisation where adoption's been great. And what you tend to see, I'm going to go to a specific example of Magic Notes. When we brought Magic Notes in, we looked at that, and we are seeing that there are people who are using 30 hours of it a month versus people who are using 0 hours of it per month. So there's definitely these pockets across the organisation. I don't exactly know what drives that. There's no kind of key trend. For me, it's just more about confidence. The people who are willing to press a button and see what happens tend to onboard these new solutions more quickly. They embrace the training a little bit more. I think we just need to explore the culture that sits around them. So I'd love to say that there's loads of success in adoption. I think there is in certain people, but then that's always a really hard sell for ROI then, isn't it? Because you've only got a small group of people using something successfully. What I think we need to look at is holistically, we're filling up a toolkit. And if it is cost effective to fill up that toolkit and people use the tools that are appropriate for the situation themselves personally, the performance measure for them is around the outcomes of their work. It's not around the usage of the technology. So if we are looking at that toolkit having options for them, I think that's probably the best possible route we could look at.
Yeah, I agree. So sort of measuring outcomes rather than the adoption of the tech would be is a
Yeah,
is a is a measurement that you could give. And I think that's
yeah.
really good. You mentioned something around sort of digital baseline, and I know we've had this conversation before. So do you think there's sort of a gap between that digital baseline and where people need to be to start adopting and seeing value from technology?
Yeah, I think we need to look at consistency. We're having lots of conversations internally at the moment around what that baseline should be, how we define it. You've probably come across all the talk about personas before and seen it get to various stages. And what tends to happen is it gets overcomplicated. There's a persona per person in the organization, and it becomes too messy. But the one that I've particularly focused in on at the moment is frontline. And for me, I think we've got data quality we need to worry about. We've got data collection we need to worry about. We've got timeliness, throughput, all of those things. It all stems from our frontline staff. So really looking at that as a collective group. Colleague and I are looking at the frontline of social care, for example.
Yeah.
Big cohort of our organisation, and that is really where we're sort of targeting to say what is that baseline digital skill that's required. We're not saying they have to be able to use Microsoft Excel or they have to be able to use this and that. It's more about concepts. So you have to be able to enter data into a case management system. You have to be able to use a mobile phone to communicate on the move. It's kind of setting those basics. So all of the trainables, the software specifics, we have the training packages from them, generally from the supplier, generally included in whatever we're already paying for it.
Yeah.
So that part is not difficult to train on. I think the difficult bit to train on is just the confidence part, if anything. And I keep sort of relating it back to if you've gone from, I recently switched from Apple to Android. I made that switch. It feels fine. I figured it out. It's all the same sort of concept. All this, the skill is already there. If I'd never used an Apple phone and then suddenly someone put an Android phone in my hand, I'd gone from an old Nokia or something like straight into my Android phone, it would have taken a longer time for me to get my head around it. And I think that's what we're seeing particularly in local government is dated systems, people who are sort of stuck in a certain time. And then we're throwing, you could use this now. Here's generative AI. And we're sort of 2 steps behind that. We haven't done the middle bit. Explaining the agile working, the working on the move, the connectivity, the real-timeness of modern working. That bit's sort of been missed, and I think that's the catch up we need to do in local government in particular, just to make sure that we are ready for moving towards teaching people how to prompt and how to use that front end AI on everything.
Yeah, and that's the end goal, but there's a whole gap to fill, and I've seen that across multiple local governments where they've got that soft skill gap, where it's building confidence and just really getting people to understand about digital, the cloud, and just basic things. It doesn't have to be. It's not about technology. It's about that human skill and uplifting that baseline, which I think is really important for across, probably not just local government, to be fair, but quite a lot across multiple different industries. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. So do you have any sort of key challenges that you face when adopting technology? I know, for instance, you mentioned Copilot there, and I obviously follow you on LinkedIn because you're quite well known, I would say, for a prompt today that you put out there. So what's your sort of key challenges that you face when adopting, like say Copilot or another technology, and really in your experience, how do you overcome them within the sort of local government sector?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times before. I think it's if you can spend 5 minutes with somebody, you can teach them a lot more than a 90-minute training session teaches them, particularly when we're talking about things like Copilot. Yeah. It's such a personalized tool or such a process-focused tool that the training that's provided by suppliers and third parties tends to be, streamline your mailbox, or it's very generic because it has to be, because they don't know what your mailbox looks like. They don't know how you manage it. So it's on you then to fill that gap. And what we are seeing is that these concepts are being thrown out into the organization, but then people are coming back to the likes of me and saying, but what do I write? What do I say to it? When do I use it? And I've just had a conversation today actually about the Microsoft adoption accessibility pages, and how you can use Copilot for accessibility, and just saying, just take that. There's a sort of day in the life of someone with ADHD, or a day in the life of someone with autism. Take that single slide and create it as your background, so it's always there, and it's always just reminding you that you could do this prompt, you could try this thing, you could try that. And I think this is where culturally we have to sort of shift that mindset, that you own your learning. Whereas I think in the past it's been here's an e-learning for this, do this. Here's an e-learning for that, do that. But like I said, the individualization of these new tools mean that you have to learn it your way. You have to embed it in your workflow, your process, augment it in your workflows to make sure that it works for you.
Yeah.
And that is a completely new concept to so many people who've gone from, digitization in the past has been take that paper form, make it a digital form, take that paper filing, make it digital filing. Now we're moving to a point where you are having conversations with something that enters data for you, recovers data for you, builds a knowledge base for you. Like, it's a complete different way of working. And I think selling that shift has been really difficult, because it's like I said, it's those 2 steps away from how we used to working, and it has come at such a pace that everything else moved along in a kind of logical order. This is just a completely different approach, and it's the culture side of it that's really, really difficult.
It's really difficult, and I have this conversation with multiple different people around, it's not training, it's not what we're used to, it's new ways of working, we have to adopt, and it's just fundamentally different. So for people to come to terms with that, I think it's taken quite a while to do, but we have to, as you said, it's moving at a quick pace, so we have no option, but we have to focus on individuals with individual processes that can show value, which will then create a culture of innovation to really spin and move things forward. So it's a very interesting space to be in at the moment, and very exciting to see what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think it's really sort of pushed the networking. I've seen a lot more networking going on since probably last year. Because people need to share, they need to collaborate. We're local government, we all do the same things in different places, so most of the processes are similar, most of the legislation is applied in the same way. There are differences, there is nuance, but you can share these things and you can tailor them. And why not? We're not competing. Someone's just got to move house and they're now in our bit. It's not like we're trying to take customers from anybody else. So we can share. We just need to be open and just share what we've got, what we've achieved. It's a really nice shift that I've seen, where previously it's been, I've come into local government from the fire service, who really shared everything, and I've come into local government and found that those kind of sharing networks were quite restricted, they were quite tight, or they were quite specific about social care, or they were quite specific about certain operations. But what we are finding now is that there's these open spaces where people can just go, I did this really cool thing, and I'd like to come along and talk about it. Everyone's talking to everyone. It's amazing.
And it's really good because it's you've got a community outside of your own sort of work environment to really collaborate and innovate and drive forward, which is fabulous. Whoever started that off is, hats off. That is a fabulous way for you to all get together and learn, isn't it? I suppose, so you've got the community outside of the council, and then obviously you've got your community where you're trying to drive that adoption. Do you have any sort of stories or examples that you can share about user feedback? So where users had seen an improvement on technology, etc., and utilization?
I think I'd probably say we're looking at it in probably around Copilot again, Copilot or Magic Notes. We're seeing that feedback. I've had there were some edge cases for Magic Notes in particular that surprised us, because we thought occupational therapists would struggle with speaking while doing effectively. It's a complete shift in how they work. They're very hands-on, that they're doing work with bodies rather than conversationally. But we've had some of our occupational therapists come away from using generative AI tools and saying, I actually really value how I can have a bit of a conversation while I'm doing things, and then I come back to it afterwards and I do a bit of a sum up. And then everything that I've done with that person is summarized in a single place. It's automatically templated off. I can then review it, human in the loop part, validate what's been said, edit it a little bit, tailor it, and then I can enter it into my system. But what I'm not doing is having a conversation with someone while looking at a notepad, running off, doing something physical, coming back, writing something down, remembering something 2 days later when I'm in my car driving to the next place. It's all those sorts of things where we're actually saying in real time, we're capturing so much more information that then acts as a really good resource for when we do the write-ups or when we follow up later down the line. And that's been a real value add for us.
Yeah, that's a really good use case. So how do you go about conducting like a cost benefit analysis for new technology investments?
I'm going to be quite controversial.
Good,
I don't like the save 10 FTE by doing X approach.
Yep.
I think you've got to look at how you can break even with the tool. And I think that's, this is completely new to so many people. I don't think you're going to hit the ground and save millions of pounds up front. I think it's going to be transformational. And for me, transformational means gradual. And it is, we go back to the networking and the sharing. You will learn something, you'll pick it up, you'll tell the person who sits next to you how to do that, and then it expands and it develops. I think it is something where you say, to get this tool in, you can sell tools like an internal sales team. So you go around the organization and you say, look, there's an opportunity there. There's a vacancy. Let's look at how we can make sure that team works one person more efficiently so they don't need that person. So we go around and we look at where we are backfilling through, agency staff and incurring additional cost at that point. So we can see that there are staff there that we are paying additional for. Does that difference equate to a license for something that could then allow us to do it more efficiently? Look at complaints and frustrations. And again, these are things that get hidden away. One of the things we talked about in the baseline, in the baseline skilling that we're trying to look at, the baseline skilling. One of the key features I put in there is a problem-solving mindset. So rather than someone coming in and going, oh, that legacy system is terrible, but it's just the way it is. They come in and they say, that's terrible. Have you tried this? Have you looked at that? Can we change this? You might hit some blockers, but then you're building up your spec for the next system and you're learning all the time. And I think that's what we are missing, is that, people are training people and they're handing the bad habits on and they're not looking proactively at the changes that need to come for 2 years time, 5 years time, 10 years time. I think those complaints from the end users can really, really feed into where these opportunities are, because if it annoys somebody, probably annoys 3 other people. If it's annoying people, it's because it's slowing them down. If it's slowing them down and you can automate it, then you're going to make a difference in those people's days.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what I'm looking at in terms of how I'm working. I came into this role to work quite closely with directors, and what I'm finding now is I'm sort of yo-yoing between directors and frontliners and trying to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Then reporting back to the directors, there's these problems. Could we look at the technology for this? And just trying to kind of run with that. Best ideas come from the people who are using the systems generally.
Correct. And I was about to say that, and I came across a use case probably a couple of weeks ago now, and it was it's an NHS case study, and it's a paediatrician who's using Copilot, and he had a patient who is a little boy who ended up in hospital because he wouldn't take his inhaler. So when the little boy came to see the doctor, the paediatrician said to him, so what's your favourite story? So what he did was he uploaded the NHS leaflet about, you will say now, don't you? Uploaded the leaflet around, the importance of the inhaler, why it's having an inhaler, and asked Copilot to create a story around Winnie the Pooh and the leaflet and the importance of being able to take it. So the little boy then had a story that he could really relate to, and it goes back to what I said about feeling and making them get that feeling of someone, but also that from that perspective, the little boy said, that's great, but my gran reads that story and I want it in Hindu. So he translated it into Hindu using Copilot. So he walked away with a story that he could relate to, that his gran could read to him. And when they told me, I thought, absolutely priceless. Now, me and you, Josh, wouldn't have come up with that use case. It's only the frontline worker that would be able to create that use case, because they're in that environment, they understand the power, and that's the power of what it can do. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I used that as one of my Copilot use cases the day before.
Did you?
So
Yes.
I don't know where we've both seen it somewhere. But yeah, I was using it to write a recipe in the style of a Gruffalo book.
Yeah.
And then I could talk through with my son, how we're going to make a cake. And he understood it and he wanted to read it. And yeah, I think that's something, in the medical field, where if you've got something complicated and scary, you really can change your way of working with a 2-second change and make a huge difference to somebody's life.
And the thing is, it goes back to how you made them feel. It is a powerful tool. And now that pediatrician feels fabulous about himself, because he's now got a little boy who walked away with a massive smile on his face. And, hopefully he doesn't end up in hospital as much as he was. So even though it's about efficiencies, there's some real good, powerful use cases. And talking about use cases, I've always wanted to ask you this question, Josh. How do you come up with your use cases every day? Because you post every single day. Come on.
Yeah, I do. And it's, most of them are in real time, unless I go on holiday and I try and bank some.
Yeah.
I either use something that actually happened in the day. Probably 1 in 5 is that. Usually I panic just as I'm getting into bed and put a use case together based on an idea, test something, see if it works, and then just get it out there. But for me, I don't write the prompts. I want to tell people the things you could try and then let them interpret that. So then it's how they apply it in their world.
So you write
lots of them are very projecty. Yeah. So I tend to just think about, the people I work with, the things I see, things outside of work, trying to do something. There's been things like route planning when I've had to try and find my way to a conference, and I've just gone, I wonder if it could do that. It's very experimental, and I just want to try and say, I think about that. It takes me a little bit of time. Can I try it? If it works, then it goes out as my use case of the day. So yeah, it is one of those things that I committed to, and I have occasionally regretted. But yeah, you can schedule posts on LinkedIn. So if I get the chance, I do bank it. I do bank a few in ready to go. But yeah, normally it's real time every day, trying to do it after my dinner and running around trying to get everything sorted for the next day, and then realizing at 10 o'clock I need to get them sent out.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of your late ones, but no, really, really good posts each day. But, just for the audience, can you just let everyone know how many Copilot licenses you've got out across Oxford? Because some people will be like, God, he's writing one every day. And we've only got like 10 licenses. How's he doing that? So can you just explain how many you've got, just so they feel a bit better about when they're not going to post every day about a Copilot use case?
Yeah, I think there's approximately 4,500. Don't know the exact number. So we went big bang.
Yeah. You've got a lot to
work. We went big bang. There's a few groups of users who've been excluded from it. They still have access to Copilot chat, so they've got kind of more limited functionality, but they still have some generative AI capability. But generally, if they were excluded, it was because they didn't spend much time in Microsoft Office or M365. So they weren't using the tools to then benefit from Copilot in the same way. But yeah, generally, if you're Office-based or if you are delving into Teams at any point, you've probably got a license at Oxfordshire.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify that, because I didn't want people thinking, wow, he's posting every day. And, they're thinking, why can't we do it? Because you've got the breadth of your experience of all the people that are using it to pull on, but it's still a mighty task. So well done. It's a really good thing to do. And you spoke to everyone that comments and watches your posts. So I suppose, sort of to finish on, and obviously we spoke about Copilot, but outside of Copilot, what emerging technologies do you believe that's going to be most sort of significant and have an impact on the council over the next sort of 5-10 years?
Automation. It's all got to be automation. I think it's all workflows. Essentially, public sector deals in caseload. Everyone's dealing in caseload. we need to be able to move things around more efficiently. So I think automation is the big one. Whether that's got AI embedded in it, some will, some won't. But yeah, I'd like to look at more and more automation. I think that's the most important place we can go, for time saving, people saving, just user experience, all of those things. And then my kind of vision for long term is that, you know, everyone has their way of doing business. They have their line of business applications, but everyone can recall information in a way that suits them. So you've got, you know, business insights and business intelligence wherever you need it. You can interrogate through Copilot wherever you need it. Managers see what managers need to see. You know, front end needs to see what front end needs to see. And that's sort of my vision, is this kind of centralizing everything we can. But it's a huge task given the variety, you know, the variety of services provided in local government. Someone told me the number the other day. I can't remember it, but it was a lot bigger than I expected. So yeah, lots of different processes, lots of different functions all in one place. But yeah, moving towards, you know, sort of a spine of data, common data model, trying to get things aligned, and then we can start to really kind of dig into how we can improve our services, where we can position our staff, how we resource things, what our competencies need to look like, all those sorts of things. But yeah, for me, to be honest, it's all got to be about workflow. It's got to be about automation.
No, I agree, and it will drive that sort of transformation in a small, steady space. But also, you know, from a user perspective, you know, frontline worker, they'll have the toolkit you mentioned to deliver what they need to deliver, no matter what role they have. So I think it's a really good place to end. So Josh, thank you ever so much for your time and sharing your experiences. It's been great chatting to you. LinkedIn, thank you very much for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Other than that, we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.